Welcome back to 4 Geeks by Geeks, the place where geeks come to geek out. As always, I'm Bozer, and I'm solo tonight. That's right, T took off my leash, and I am free to run rampant on the internet all by myself. I'm a big boy. I can do hard things. Check me out. It's my first solo stream in, God, Lord knows how long. Probably for a good choice that I had someone to hold me accountable and keep the reins going. But we're gonna learn on the fly. And my poor guest tonight is going to receive all of my energy with no blockade from T. But T has to be a big boy and do big boy things. So he might be joining us in the chat, but we'll miss him as always. But thank you all for joining us tonight for this week's Monday Night Geek Out Sesh. If this is your first Geek Out Sesh, we do this each and every Monday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time with a brand new geek guest. So be sure, if you are here tonight and you're having a good time, tune in live on Twitch or on YouTube at this time, or you can always watch it back on YouTube afterward and check out all the great conversations and inspiration and motivation and pure stupidity that we do here, classically here on FGBG. But I hope you guys all had a great week. I want to know, the question of the night is, by using command QOTD, you can find out the question of the day, which is, what was your Nat 1 moment from the week? And from the chat, we have somebody who told us that they messaged their ex back, which ended up being a horrible decision. So I'm sorry, Witch Rising. I hope that, I don't know, you block them, you just ghosted them, or I don't know. I hope that ended okay for you. But just like all Nat 1s, they don't tend to end up okay. That's the actual point of a Nat 1. I will share my Nat 1 from this past week. Guys, I know that you call me Grandpa Bozer because I tend to be the oldest one here. But Grandpa Bozer literally fell down the stairs. I fell down the stairs. My basement stairs have stairs, and the second stair is a little bit smaller than the other stairs. So you take that first step with full confidence. You take that second step with equal amount of confidence, but you shouldn't. You should have less confidence and more caution because it's smaller. And my foot slipped, and thankfully it's a very short stairway before it turns, and I fell all the way down the stairs, and I even have a rug burn to prove it. Thankfully, they are carpeted. Look. Proof. I hope it scars to prove that Nat 1s are real and they do hurt you. Didn't I tell you how dangerous stairs were? Yes, you did. And now we both know the hard way. I think you might have learned a harder way. I'm grateful that I only came out of it with a rug burn. But for those in the chat, thank you for being here live here on a Monday night. You can join the conversation by joining the chat, just like Witch Rising and anybody else. Sound off if you are in the chat. I see some other numbers. I know you're here. Say hello so that you can all hang out with us tonight. But boy, I hope you guys had a great week. This week was pretty solid. Here where I'm at, it's now like -13, or at least it feels like it. So I don't know wherever you're watching back if that's awesome because it's not as hot as where you're at, or whether you pity me. Hey, JJ Cruz on the stream. Hi, boys. New setup is fire. Thank you so much. Funny story about JJ Cruz. One day, I'm going to tell you about it. We're not there yet, but thank you. That means a lot coming from them. And a special, huge shout out. I think I can do this, and it'll... Come on, do the thing. You always do it when I don't want you to. It's this new iOS update. It's a Mac thing. Oh, now you're not going to do it? Now you're not going to do it? Well, it would make hearts pop out of my hands. Thank you. You get it. I hope you guys are great. I hope you're enjoying your traveling on your cruise. They are cruise vloggers. One day they're going to be on the show. One day they're going to be on the show. Heck, they could be on the show live right here in this setup. Who knows? But I hope you guys are safe. I hope it's a good start to your cruise. And I want to know, what was your Nat 1 moment from the week, boys? We've got a great show for you tonight, y'all. I've got a great, amazing guest on a second Geek Out session of the year. Are you kidding me? For my guest that's waiting in the wings that you can't see, but he can hear me. FGBG took kind of a brief hiatus. Brief meaning the past 6 months of 2024, because life and work got crazy. And so, unfortunately, we got some weird, what's the word I'm searching for? Habit? No, stigma. Weird stigma for, not showing up to stream. But that changes this year, and it's all starting last week with a great, amazing guest. If you missed NATO from Heroes and Beasts Miniatures, he made incredible minis, but he dropped some even more incredible wisdom just on the creator space and coming from true imagination and creativity. So if you missed it, you can find it back on YouTube. Check it out. And I'm really excited to find out even more about that space tonight with a brand new guest. For anybody that has seen a dice or used a dice or played TTRPGs, or maybe even really want to take that next step into making your own. I know if your feed looks anything like mine, you see tons of great dice, but I've always been so enthralled by how it even happens. Like I'm that smooth brain. Like, how do they do that? So I'm excited to find out and really find out from the imagination of this creator, because we're going to check out some of his dice tonight and find out like where the inspirations come from, because they are honestly next level. They are so next level that as soon as I saw them, I immediately purchased a set and I have zero regrets. So if y'all are ready, I am ready. Please give a big warm FGBG welcome to my guest tonight, Ben from Rampant Hart Studios.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Ben, thank you so much for being here. And might I say, that's a great looking shirt.
Thank you. I like your shirt as well.
Oh, do you? This old thing? I just threw it on.
Yeah, I think we were checking it out. Even the pockets lined up. Might be the exact same label.
Yeah, because if y'all missed it, if you've been paying attention to the Instagram stories at all throughout today, Ben posted something about tonight's stream and he's wearing that shirt. And immediately I said, Ben, is that what you're wearing tonight? Because we could be cute as hell and break the internet.
I'm happy to try.
Can we even do one of these? I know it's backwards. It's always backwards.
There we go.
Now hold it while I reach with the other hand and hit my clip button. I think I can reach it. There we go. Cute.
Cool.
Cute. No, you look great. You got great style, great fashion.
Thank you. Yeah, you do as well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Ben, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. It has been a little chilly where I'm at. I'm currently in Tacoma, moved out west. I'm a little south of Seattle. We had some frost come in, and I went out to a nature reserve this morning for a little bit of a walk, and everything was frosted. There was steam coming off the water and like literal Misty Mountains vibes. So did some dwarven throat singing across the lake. That was the start of my day. It was great.
Did the mountains move at all? Do they open up new caverns or?
Yeah, there was this moment where there was a door by the lake and it opened.
Yeah.
And I thought, I got this podcast this evening. I really shouldn't go down those mines. So maybe next week, I'll check it out.
Make sure you document every inch because I wanna know about that. But I'm just jealous that you said it's a little chilly this morning, and you A, could go outside to walk, and B, the water wasn't frozen solid.
Yeah, there were sections. It was actually, it's kind of the smaller areas were frozen, but The bigger part was still liquid. When I say chilly for here, it was just below freezing when I went out this morning, so super cold.
Just below freezing. Okay, so we're at -13 and you're just below freezing. So that's like another 40-degree difference. Neat.
Yeah.
Neat.
Well, and it was interesting too because the person I was with, they're like, "Hey, it's a little cold. Are you sure you want to go?" I'm like, "I love the cold." I learned that the same temperature in both Celsius and Fahrenheit is -40 when I was living in China, where it was -40. So I loved it. It was great.
China gets that cold?
Yeah, far north, Harbin, it's famous for its ice festival in the winter.
Yeah, so you're learning immediately that Bozer doesn't know shit about shit. That's why I host a show and ask questions.
Yeah.
I don't need to know anything. So tell me more about Harbin later.
Okay, I'm happy to. Yeah.
But it sounds like you're well-traveled.
Yeah, I've spent most of my time in East Asia, most of that in China. My first time there, I was just a foreign exchange student in the far north in college. And my third time there was a middle internship where we traveled a lot. And my third time, I was there as an English teacher, oral English. And I was in the northern or the far south part of China. So I went from the ice of Harbin to one of the 4 ovens of Changsha. And it was just very different experiences.
I just know I'd go over there and mispronounce everything, no matter how long I lived there.
You get a pass. They can tell you're foreign, and so they're pretty generous with the tones.
They could tell. You think they could tell I was foreign? You think so?
Yeah, but if you're in the north, like in Harbin, you're going to get called Russian more often than not. So be prepared for that. Yeah.
Okay, I did play a Russian in Fiddler on the Roof once, so
perfect. Yeah, you're in.
Pretty much same thing. Ben, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm so excited to talk to you and get to know the process behind your creativity, behind these awesome dice that you've been making, and just pick your brain and hear all the thoughts, even the things that I don't even know about, because clearly your brain is much more wrinkly, and so I want to know what that's like. That's interesting. But first, I got to know, what was your Nat 1 moment from the week?
Oh, I knew I needed to roll at least a 15 nature check, and it was a 1 when I tried to replant my office mate's tomato plant. It had been in water and dying because my office mate is very rarely in office. And so she was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to throw it away. I said, don't throw it away. I'll save it. Did not save it. I took that plant, stuck it right in some dirt, and it immediately died. So, which can happen. They go through shock like that. And I needed to roll high, and it was a 1. That thing is just dead in my window.
So if you put new tomato or old tomato plant in new dirt, it just freaks the fuck out?
I think if you take plants that were like raised in water, because it was one of those like desk machines that had a pod and like a light over it.
Oh,
so
okay.
It spent its whole life in water. And I just threw it in dirt. And I think if you raise plants in water and throw it in dirt, they go into some sort of shock. I'm pretty new in my plant daddy phase, so still learning.
Okay, plant daddy. That's a next tattoo right there. Just right. Do you have a tramp stamp yet? Because I think you just found one.
Plant daddy.
Plant daddy. I am terrible at plants. I have a small plant by a window upstairs, and I noticed I didn't even know how long it'd been there. And I'm like, you might need some water. And so I put some water in it. And I don't even know what kind of plant it is, or even if it's a real plant. I don't know. I might have watered plastic this morning. Who knows?
If you did, it didn't hurt it.
Right.
Yeah.
But can I hurt a plant by watering it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the biggest threats to your plants is overwatering. So even like a cactus, it's about not having, let me rephrase. It's about thorough watering and not frequent watering. You don't want root rot to set in. So drainage is really important. And when I water my plants, I soak them. Like they're just like floating in that water and I let it drain out. But I only do that maybe maybe every other week, because you really want to let it dry out. You don't want to keep dumping in water like every day, just little bits.
Yeah, I think we need a Geek Out session watering plants so that I can learn more about that. What up, Faros? Thanks for being here, Bozer Dozer. I like that. Keep it up. You know a lot about a lot of things, it feels like, because we're not even here to talk about plants. We're here to talk about dice.
Here to talk about dice.
So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do as a geek.
Sure. My name is Ben. I am a geek in a lot of different ways. I make dice, but recently I think the nerdiest thing I've really gotten into is called Lit RPG, a literary RPG. It's a genre of books. Imagine you're reading a novel, and the novel has like characters that kind of like level up. So it's like you're reading a video game.
Is that a thing?
Series. Yeah, it's a whole subgenre.
Grabbing notepad.
I read all of He Who Fights with Monsters in about a month. So
this is a lit RPG?
Yeah. There's a series called He Who Fights with Monsters. I want to say I think I've read about 7,000 to 8,000 pages of his work, and did little else that month.
And that's across how many books?
11.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God. Follow-up question: are they on audiobooks?
I don't think so. The author's Australian. Well,
damn.
There's a website called Royal Road where people will put up chapters, and the author Shirtaloon, I think, releases them chapter by chapter, and then once the book is done, he takes them and packages them as a Kindle ebook, and you pay $5 or whatever.
Okay.
I read it that way, but there are tons of lit RPG series on that website alone where you can go and check it out.
I've never even heard of this. Now at least I know what to Google.
There's
lit
a book
RPG.
That's getting lit RPGs. Dungeon Crawler Carl is on my list. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, Dungeon Crawler Carl, and it's got a lot of good reviews, so I need to get around to reading that one. I know it has yet to hit the library in northern Indiana, because I was trying to check it out when I was back in the state.
So you were originally from this part of the world?
Yeah.
Not including China?
Correct. I'm from the greater South Bend area and have done a lot of moving around. I was in Muncie for my undergrad. I moved to Austin, Texas for a little bit. Lived in China a couple times. I did law school at Michigan State in East Lansing, so I lived in Michigan for a while. And now I'm in the Pacific Northwest.
So we could have been neighbors.
Yeah, very, very easily.
And that's actually how we got connected. Is we have a mutual friend that when I was talking about the show, they mentioned, "Oh, I've got a friend to be a great guest." And we got connected, immediately found your Instagram, immediately bought a set of your dice. And I think they even hand-delivered them to me. And
they did.
So your service is out of this world.
We try. We here at Rampant Hart Studios care a lot about service.
Clearly. So you've been a geek all your life about a great many things. How did you first kind of zero in on like making a thing out of dice making?
It all goes back to Critical Role. I am that kind of nerd.
Same.
Huge fan of Critical Role.
Huge critter. Yeah. half of my clothes in that closet are Critical Role. I was just drinking out of I would like to rage mug earlier, but I switched to a drinking horn.
Yeah, I thought about wearing my Grog Strongjaw keg T-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's.
But somebody bullied you into matching him on the internet so he could. Yeah.
It's gotten a little tight. I need to work out a little bit more. I wish I had the Jox Machina shirt. I don't know how.
Jox Machina?
I don't know if you remember that from like the OG stream. They had Jox Machina shirts for a little bit, and then I was like.
I came in campaign 2. Like that's really where I came in the bread and butter. So I'm catching up on campaign 1 through the Amazon Prime show.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And now all the references to campaign 1 and campaign 2 are making a lot more sense.
Yeah. Well, and their Amazon cartoon, as somebody who has watched the live play podcast and listened to the podcast multiple times,
Yeah,
it is fascinating to know some of the backstories and decision they're making as they translate it to a TV show. And I am biased, but I think they do a really great job of kind of reshuffling the storytelling and making it make sense in the new medium. And I really appreciate how much energy they're putting into that. And the other voices they're bringing in. I get so stoked whenever Lady Kima comes on, just because I think of Detective Diaz, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And it's the same actress.
That's why it sounds familiar. I'm like, where do I know that from? Oh, no, I'm obsessed. And you can tell from not listening to the whole campaign, like, obviously I know that campaign could not fit within, like, the 20 episodes across 2 seasons.
No, yeah.
But so I love how they streamlined it. And then I love how they keep those little moments where, again, even though I didn't listen to the first campaign, I know that, like, that was a Nat 1 and it was a funny moment and they kept it.
Yep.
And it just, like, I imagine the hearts growing 3 sizes. By the way, thank you, DGF, for the subscription for like 100 months in a row. You're the king.
That's how I got started in Dungeons and Dragons at all. I was working remotely for a nonprofit in Austin. I had moved back to my hometown area to live with my grandma for a little bit because family reasons. And I'm working from home, and I just had Felicia Day playing video games in the background. She was playing a Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
And she mentioned, her channel, Geek and Sundry. She has this thing, Critical Role, and I started watching it, got hooked, and I have kind of kept up with Critical Role since. D&D has kind of blossomed in my heart as something I just absolutely love. And we can come back to these ideas, but even from therapeutic perspectives, there are some people doing really interesting things, therapy-driven things at the table. Community care is a really important thing for me. So if we ever get to talk about some maybe future ideas for Rampant Heart, we can touch on that. And
absolutely.
You see people in Critical Role, especially early on, they were just sending all these gifts to the players. And they'd have Christmas, and they'd be opening up all these gifts, and some of them would be custom dice. And so that kind of, flagged for me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because my first set of dice were the Critical Role original set. And I'm like, I got my set, I got my book. It
good.
Doesn't even occur to me. Yeah, like,
only
this will be
dice
collector's items today. Yeah.
I don't need 100 pieces of dice. No, not
right.
me.
No. That's kind of the joke. First one's free. I'll give you dice. You'll come back. They always do.
Dice goblins.
So people give gifts, and some of them are custom dice, and I flagged it. And then I'm in law school. I'm in this tiny apartment, and dice collecting becomes a thing. I become a little bit more of a Geistgoblin. I see other people making, and for me, it simply is this idea of, I want to play. That looks like fun. I want to do that. So I kind of had to put it on hold. I was a little busy. Time was cramped. This pandemic happened while I was in law school.
Time is cramped as a law student.
Yeah, crazy. The world was on fire. We're wiping down our groceries. I just didn't have the space to learn how to do it.
But everybody had a COVID hobby. Mine was Animal Crossing. Yours was actually saving the world through the law. So good for you.
Yeah, it was law school. My hobby was law school, studying for the bar, which, thankfully, side note, I was able to take remotely. I don't know, how would it have been, because it's such a stressful situation. You're in this environment with all these other people. It's a nightmare. But I got to take it remotely. I got to listen to Lady Gaga's Marry the Night on my breaks, which got me through the bar. Thank you, Gaga. Thank you, Marry the Night.
She watches, so she'll get this. Yeah.
Yeah, she'll hear me every break, or even to myself, like I'm reading the text. Oh, Mary, get it together, Mahoney. Come on, man, like focus. But we got through it, and then you have to wait for the test results. So I had a few months of downtime, and I just bought all of the supplies to make dice. And my good friend Cody runs Clay Table. It's a pottery studio he built, and we're very close. And he said, "Hey, man, there are some things that kind of line up between pottery and dice making, and some philosophies about bringing people to the table, and what dice can do and what pottery can do. So you're welcome to make dice, do it out of my garage, which as a safety issue, that was really helpful for me, his garage studio, which he built. And so I made dice under his label and did that for a while, really enjoyed it, really loved working with him. And he was really influential on dice making, which again, we'll get into in the process. But now I want to do my own thing, Rampant Hart Studios, and have the kind of freedom to do dice, do journals, do some DMing under this umbrella, and not worry about how I might go on Instagram and say things just completely out of pocket. How might that hurt my buddy's business? I don't want to go out there and be like, "Hey, here's my opinion about this law," and who knows who it attracts.
No, but that brings up an interesting point, because like we all have those people that have kind of been those we'll call them like banks on the river that really kind of help set us on the trajectory for where we're meant to be. But eventually you have to kind of give yourself the space to blossom and give yourself the space to become more fully of who you were meant to be.
Yeah.
And especially like when it comes to like the law, like that is your background, and like you have a really cool say, and that's a really cool niche to blend that with the geek scene. And I think that just sets you up on a really interesting platform as a unique voice in that space.
Yeah, and it's it's a little complicated. Like I was talking to my mom, and we were joking about if she wins the lottery, and now how are you to manage the trust? I'm like, Mother, I have only studied like humanitarian immigration protections. I cannot manage your trust. Don't do that. That's malpractice. I can't. And I practiced in a few areas, but there are definite levels where for me, I think a lot of the blending comes into my storytelling. Storytelling and also kind of like chill bro advocacy. While I am a lawyer, I'm not like a rules lawyer. Like sometimes it's the rule of cool. Chill bro. Like, we're here to have fun.
Like at the table.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought this was a branch of law, which I had never heard of. And I'm like, where can I sign up for that? I want that.
You say that, but like 2 weeks ago, I was in office and talking about a case, and I'm new to Washington and learning Washington law, and my colleague and I were talking, and I'm like, I'm just gonna ask opposing counsel to be chill. And he's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, I'll just come like, "Yeah, chill, bro. Let me do what I want. Just it's chill." Not strong legal theory, but worth a shot.
But if you roll in at 20, then
yeah.
They have nothing to say. Yeah. They're like, you know what? Respect. That's a critical. Great.
Yeah.
So then are you playing D&D now regularly? Like, have you been able to blend that storytelling and like the DMing that you've wanted to back into your life?
I'm starting to. I have yet to get a table going out here. Because, for context, and anybody who goes to my Instagram, first off, excuse me.
Please.
Thank you so much for checking it out. It's a little dead. 2023, I tried moving out to Seattle and, try to make it in the big city, and things kind of went sideways. And in that move, I got rid of everything. I had a house, sold the house. If it didn't fit in my Buick LeSabre, it wasn't going out west. So I really shrunk down. That means things like my pressure pot and dice making supplies just couldn't make it. Seattle didn't go so great, moved back to Indiana, finished a few processes, and then came back up to Washington. So I've gone back and forth across the country 3 times in the past, year or so. Things have been really unsettled. Yeah, absolutely.
God.
Yeah, it's
That's a road trip.
Yeah, yes, it is. Two of them have been kind of in winter times, and it's dangerous.
Oh my
We made
God. Do you just take like Route 66, or that goes south, doesn't it?
That goes a little south. Yeah.
Okay. Other way.
In the summer, heading west is awesome because you're like running with the sun, and like I don't think it's healthy for, road hypnosis or whatever. Like, but if you wake up early and you're following the sun, like for me, it's like I'll drive 12 hours. This is chill. It's just a straight shot. But especially this most recent time. So last July, I herniated 3 discs in my back. So I've been a little immobile, some struggling with some health stuff. Drove across the country, had to take frequent breaks to stretch my back out, those sorts of things.
You could drive for like an hour and a half and stop.
Yeah. My spine surgeon's like, look, man, truckers have back issues. You can do it. You just got to be smart. So I haven't been able to make a lot of dice. Life's been crazy.
Yeah.
D&D's, all that stuff's taken a back seat. But now I'm starting to get settled. Talking to some coworkers, and even one of my ideas with Rampant Hart Studios, you talk to people, and so many people I encounter on places like dating apps want to play D&D, never had a shot. So why don't I run a table for newbies with everyone I flirt with online? Hey, we got something in common.
Is this guys? Guys, I don't want to hear that I can't find players in my table. You have an app in your pocket. Put it in your bio. They will come to you. Oh my God, this is the greatest advice. You're welcome, internet. This is real? Are you starting a table full of people you've met on dating apps?
Not yet, because I want to get Rampant Heart kind of settled and like get like a schedule me or Calendly or something so people can sign up. I really want to do I want to take some or 5e 24 5e rules and kind of simplify them a little bit. So instead of being like, what class do you want to play? It's going to be more, hey, you're brand new to role-playing games. What role do you want to play? Do you want to play the thief, healer, fighter, those sorts of things? And then I'll kind of give them everything they need in kind of a custom class. We won't have to worry about subclasses. We won't have to worry about, rolling your hit dice, anything like that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then that would be like a service I would offer. So, hey, give me $10. Come sit at the table for a few hours. I'll run a newbie one shot for you. But I also really, really enjoy long form campaigns. That was one of the things. I got very, very lucky in law school in that through Meetup, Meet Me, Join Me, the Meetup program, software, website. I met one of my best friends now through that. We just, he was getting a table going. We happened to click. It was a lot of fun. And make lifelong friends that way. So I really love the long form campaigns. We went level 5 to level 20.
Damn.
Yeah.
And how long? 8 years?
2 years.
When you playing twice a week? Okay, weird.
No, dedication. You show up. It's easy when the only person who had kids that weren't like adult or like high school or whatever was the DM, and
So as long as it works for the DM schedule, then everyone was great.
Yeah, and who's able to prioritize. And so,
that was a reminiscent sigh just then, I heard.
So, it was such good times.
Good old days.
The good old days. I played a monk fighter for 2.5 years. Yeah.
So cool. I've yet to play a fighter, but I keep hearing like on Critical Role. Bo, I'm like, that's so cool. I want to do that one.
That was, I loved it. I love playing monk. I don't know, for whatever reason, monks, I think, get a bad rep, and I don't quite understand it. I think they're a lot of fun. But I'm working on a campaign now, because I homebrew everything. People ask, like, oh, do you run Strahd? And I'm like, I don't have the time to learn somebody else's campaign. I'm busy. if I'm making my own campaign, I can just make stuff on the spot and it's canon, and I don't have to worry about how this affects the story, right?
Right.
And so
And
I'm
someone
very
else will take notes and remember. It's great.
exactly. It's it's jazz. It's improv. I'm just doing whatever I want.
Jazz.
It's jazz. Um,
I'm using that at my table. I'm currently DMing a D&D right now for the first time. And,
oh wow! Yeah,
and it's like, it's jazz. I'm
it's
using that.
jazz. Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, well, I really like the idea of doing an Underdark campaign that is really influenced by Imperial Star Wars settings. So we're underground. We're part of like the Loth Empire. You know, we're gonna take some of that, and then I'm gonna get out my map, and I'm gonna make my own little continent, and we're gonna have our Coruscant, you know, the center, and then we're gonna have like, you know, cities, but they're all connected through tunnels. So like the hyperspace routes are these tunnels. Do you want to take the main tunnels? You know, how risky is that? And then there's like rings. So you get out to like the outer rim, the Tatooine's like, well, there's an Empire presence, but it's not, you know, how strong are they in our Tatooine, which is the far side of the, you know, the web of the Empire. So I'm just stealing like outer ring, inner ring. Hey, Star Wars, we're going to take some of those ideas. We're going to put it in the Underdark and, you know, long-form campaign. Let's fight a Loth Empire. Blow up a Death Star. Why not? That's awesome.
Do you have to be in person to play in this campaign, or will you take virtual?
I really want to be able to offer online services in DMing and running campaigns online. I'm a bit of a Luddite, and I make dice by hand. So one, I need to learn the softwares like Roll20 and, you know, the things that are available. I just don't have a lot of experience with it. Two, I don't like the idea of people using dice from like a click of a button. I would want you to be able to feel free to roll your dice on your table. And for me, you know, that's like my DM buddy for a couple of years. It's a thing of like, hey, you know, if you're rolling dice and you cheat, you're just stealing from yourself. Like, I'm the DM. We're here to have fun. I'm here to have fun. I'm not your dad. I'm
right.
not here to police you. Yeah.
But there is something so cathartic and like you can feel the stars aligning when you roll that dice physically. Yes, now this starts the age-old question, like virtual versus physical. Is there a difference? And especially like I have a Fate Core, if you're familiar with that campaign.
Yeah.
That we're doing Cloudscape. Check it out. It's on YouTube. Farrell's a big fan. And so a few of my players use the virtual, and I don't mind. Like you said, like I'm not here. Like I can't see your dice. I don't trust it. If you're lying about it, you're just stealing from yourself, and that's on you, not me.
Right.
But there is like that. I love that feeling of rolling the dice, seeing it like turn. Maybe it takes on the cusp of something. It's a little cocked, but then it lands on something, and that feels like it was fate.
I think for me too, there is the tactile, you know, the touching of the dice, the rolling of the dice. You can't put virtual dice in dice jail. Very true. Yeah. I think there's also a level of immersion where, because this is play, this is pretend, and if I am, you know, grabbing my dagger, you know, my character's grabbing my dagger, and I'm imagining that, I'm grabbing the D20, and there's like that kind of connection there.
Yeah.
And I like that. I don't have a really strong opinion too about, you know, can virtual dice truly be random? I don't know enough about software. I don't necessarily care. And this actually segues into one of those things that is the biggest pet peeve of dice makers. If you ever feel the need, and I have a mug here, to ask a dice maker, are they balanced? You can eat shit. Go away. Are they balanced? First off, this is internet lore. You know, how true is this? But like, the only balanced dice are 6-sided dice from Vegas. If you're buying your Chessex sets, they're not running around testing each die for perfect.
You don't sell test every single dice.
No.
You're a fake. Get out. Get out. Sorry, I can only apologize for my guest tonight, you guys.
It's going to mess with the paint job, first of all.
First of
all, you're going to get salt in my numbers. More, and again, this is things that I've gleaned from learning about dice making from, the internet.
Yeah.
And I am under the impression that, first off, the size of the sides of the dice, the even sides, are going to be a bigger impact than any sort of weight. Dice makers also don't want to sell dice that aren't as balanced as possible. We're using resin inclusions. We're doing things that make sense for the die. And I personally have kind of pushed the bar a little bit, I would say, especially working with clay table and having ceramics nearby, because we rolled these little dice, rolled like little marbles out of clay, fired them, and tossed them in dice. I only did that for the marbles that were closest to fitting the entirety of the die. I'm not going to put like a clay marble that's like mostly on one side of it, so it's heavily weighted.
Right.
I might experiment. I've done things like I've taken rods of like copper and thrown them in there because of like a Davy Jones feel. So there's some like seaweed moss and copper of like, I don't know. But the copper links were the entirety of the die.
Right.
And so dice makers really do try to make them as balanced as possible. Bubbles, don't throw it off. If you have a DM,
I roll.
If you have a DM that won't let you play with custom dice because they're not balanced, let me know where they're at, and I'll just
leave the table.
It's
Listen, you say, no, I paid more for this dice
right.
than you have for that whole Amazon 50 set that you have. What I'm hearing is, if you're willing to pay somebody to craft their art into your dice, and you're waiting for them to be shipped, then don't ask stupid ass questions like, are they balanced? That's not what it was about in the first place. You fell in love with the dice and you want to play with them. End of story.
And even if they roll natural 20s 0.2% more frequently, so we're here to tell stories and have fun. This isn't like what's the stakes?
You're not rolling enough to even learn that in the first place.
Right. Yeah. So that is the biggest, that is like the bane of dice makers. People coming to our comments and be like, but are they balanced? Yeah, go away. I don't care.
Are you? Because I don't care. You are. No, of course you care. Otherwise you wouldn't go into making dice.
Right. I spend hours being very, very careful and sanding down each side and making sure that they are as even as possible, because I do want you to have a very good playing experience. I'm not here. Side note, people will poke at the dice. I'm like, oh, look, there's a bubble. We have yet to start about the process of making dice. But there can be bubbles.
What's next?
We'll get to it. There can be bubbles. But your Chessex dice that are like opaque, they have bubbles too, man. And we do everything we can to get rid of these bubbles. We try to make it as professional, clean, solid work as possible. Sometimes bubbles happen. It's not going to ruin your play.
If anybody's worked with resin for 0.2 seconds, you know that bubbles are everywhere, and it takes like real crafters like yourself to even eliminate most of them, let alone any.
It can. I'll let you in on a little secret. The pressure pots. I don't know if you're familiar with pressure pots.
I wouldn't be running this channel if I was familiar.
So like there are a lot of different techniques to get bubbles out. A lot of dice makers now, myself included, like I'll mix up the resin, and part of the process is throwing it in a pressure pot, and as they cure, all of the bubbles shrink. So they are technically still there, but they're microscopic, and you can't see them because the pressure from the pressure pot will make them not visible.
Insider scoop, y'all. That's why you're here. Okay, so but before we get too much in the weeds of the next level, take us way back. Go to Bozer level status of how to make dice. What is your process? And while we do you mind if we scroll your Instagram and
By
kind
all
of
means.
show off some of your amazing dice?
Yeah, yeah. All of the dice, they have different approaches to it, different techniques. There are different styles. Even in field, I guess we call things different things. So for example, I don't like the traditional caltrop, like pyramid shaped D4s. I think they're terrible. So one of the D4s I use, and you'll probably see, are these kind of like pyramid shapes.
I love those pyramid
crystals. There are lots of different styles. I eventually moved to a shard kind of style. But each of these sets, as we're rolling through, are a little different. There is one, actually I still have that set, that is done with Angelina fibers, mica powder, silver leaf that I really chunked up, and it has like a really cool blizzard feel to it.
So you went and mined this ore from the caverns that you sung to, and put them in your dice.
Yeah. They actually do. People make stone dice. You can go. There's actually one person who makes dice out of clay and fires them, like pottery. I have a set from them as a collector. I grabbed that. Also, you can see some of these pictures. I'm seeing it now. It looks a little blurry. Dice are the worst things to photograph.
Yeah. Plus, I'm zooming in, so it's not on you. It's not on you.
I spend so much time just trying to get a good picture.
What do you take these pictures on, by the way? Like, as the film nerd in me, I'm like, what camera are you using?
My phone camera. I just got a new phone, but I was using this one. So all of these pictures were taken on this Galaxy Note 9. And I went in to upgrade, and I was like, what are we on, 10, 11? And they're like, here's a Galaxy Note, or Galaxy 24. And they handed it to me. I was like, well, where's the headphone jack? And they go, oh, honey, headphone jack. I'm old.
You're cute. Using wired headphones. Yeah.
Well, in my car, I can't listen to my phone anymore in my car because I don't have an aux or Bluetooth or whatever.
They're aging us out, Ben.
They are.
They're trying to make us obsolete.
But this set I actually really like. I call that the Kestrel set because I kind of had the American Kestrel in mind because they're very blue and orange, and I really enjoy Spelljammer settings, and thinking of Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite. I cry. End of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, just weeping.
Who wouldn't?
Their stories, amazing. But I still have that set. It is technically for sale. I want it. So please buy it, but also please don't.
By the way,
I just love it.
If you want to take the set off his hands and break his heart, you can use command Rampant and find the link to his Instagram. And if you're watching back or listening back after the live stream, you can find the links below in the description. Head right there, buy his dice. Because honestly, like I said, in my FGBG scrolling, like all of my feed is geek stuff. So many dice makers. I am not just gassing you up when I say your designs are next level. Like, I can see the amount of work and artistry that you put into your designs, and especially with this multiple, almost contrasting elements that you're adding in. Like here, it almost looks like a blue cloud with sparkles, and then you have these like unicorn hairs inside. What the fuck is this?
Angel fibers, Angelina fibers. They go by different names.
Literally from heaven. Wow.
They're just sparkly unicorn
angel hair guy.
Yeah. Depends. Sometimes, there are times where I'll go to like Michael's and I'll see certain like stickers or washi tape. I'm like, oh, a dice maker just used that. I just saw them post. So there are some times where like there's overlap. This is just to brag a little bit, but if you scroll back up just a touch, that D10, that's a video. I'm not sure if we should even play video game. That set I sold. I have a lot of feelings about that set because one of the things I talk about too about making dice is color and light. And working with Cody and Clay Table was really helpful for me because he is a professional artist, trained artist. He could help me talk about color theory and thinking these through. That set was really cool, but was also really hard to showcase because of the gold numbering. And I think the gold was correct, but one of the things that are really cool about dice making is to do underpainting. So if I were to do that again, I would probably put like a silver underpainting because the light is reflecting off the bottom, like through the die, and hitting like the bottom of the floor and reflecting that yellow. Exactly. Yeah. So I should have done like a silver to keep it very light and then have the inked and gold, and that would kind of preserve some of the clarity.
Illuminate it, like backlight it a little bit.
Yeah. Because instead you got some of that gold bouncing around and it almost makes it look like the resin's yellowed, because resin should not be exposed to the sunlight. It will yellow, it will fade. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you buy your dice.
This looks like you literally, like it was hewn from crystal.
I'm also very proud of that set. So we should talk about different styles. Yeah.
You should be.
One of the things I want to do more of in exploring that set, and one of the challenges is in the mold making and some of the very finicky details. And so that set is of a mindset, and I want to keep trying to perfect it, but the idea of shattered radiance, I wanted it to be for like a cleric, we're going to do guiding bolt. So in the layers of the dice, that set took multiple castings. I had to put it in the pressure pot many times because I needed to get the forms, like of the D10, these kind of like diamond shapes, and they were almost broke apart. So they weren't even touching. And then I took strands of Mylar and other shiny things and some UV resin and kind of reconstructed it to have some sort of form and have these bands of brilliance holding the explosion together, and then you recast it into the blank, and then you recast it again. You want the stability, and then you cast it in the numbers. So that I think that set took 3 pours total.
Okay, so again, Bozer level.
We have to take a huge step back.
You take resin and you do this? How does this?
Much like the heart of the cards, it's the heart of the resin, heart of the die, and you just.
Is there a blue eyes involved?
There's a blue eyes. Actually, yeah. No. So if you want to do dice making, first off, if you want to do dice making and sell your dice, you need to get masters. Anyone can take my dice and use them to make your own dice for your own purposes. But if you sell them, we're going to have some copyright issues. Not only do I have custom faces on my D20, but also shapes aren't copywritten, fonts can be. So a lot of dice makers do have special fonts. I hire companies. There are dice master companies out there who will make master dice. And so, especially with my new logo, one of the things I talked about with my tattoo artist, because my logo is based off of a tattoo, I need different things from the artist, including maybe just the head of the heart, H-A-R-T, the deer. Because I thought the whole deer probably won't fit on the side of a D20, but if I focus on the head, the big antlers, and the mane of that deer, that'll probably work for my top numbers.
For those who don't know what we're talking about this brand new logo. Look how sexy. Are you getting this tattooed on your body immediately? Because I think you should.
Who, me?
Yes.
No, the tattoo came first.
What?
That's already happened. Yeah, that's done, man. That's
There it is. There it is.
Yeah, love it.
Okay,
Can we talk about her pre-stream, Sarah?
No, I think start. Yes, pre-stream. Yeah.
Okay,
My
so
God, Ben, we have
sorry.
so much things I want to talk to you
I know.
about, and we're just talking about them all. This is a proof of a good geek out session when we can't even like stay on topic because we just want to talk about everything. We're doing great. We're killing it. Just to let you know.
So
So you're talking about copyright issues,
copyright issues. Yes, that is not my
masters,
legal opinion. um,
not legal opinion.
Not legal opinion. This is not my legal opinion. It does not reflect the opinion of my employer in any way or my professional legal opinion. These are all things that I've gleaned from other dice makers and my research online. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of my legal experience is tied to immigration issues. I've done a few other things. I have not done copyright issues. But
do I need to clip that for your own record? Or
no, it's fine. It's fine.
okay, okay.
But fonts can be copywritten, shapes can't be, and I think too, most likely, these dice makers probably have some level of protection for their dice. Now they are making these dice to be sold. They are making masters to dice makers so that dice makers can make a mold. If you don't want to buy masters, which is probably, for me, I would need a set, I would need custom faces, I would want to have blanks. So I'll order numbered dice, and then I'll order dice that are not numbered and slightly smaller than the dice. And those are called blanks. So I can do certain techniques or styles. It just gives me more flexibility, more variability in my designs. I might also order platforms. And so that alone can easily be a $300 investment to get the masters.
Interesting. I mean, you have to put in money to make money, and also just support, because those are creators too, right?
Right. And they are really cool people. They have different, business models, things like that. But a lot of them, that's their full-time job, to make dice masters and other things from the 3D printing.
Not the tabletop game Dice Masters, which I really got into for a long time, and I'm sad that they stopped making them. Completely different.
Actually, when we talk about the blanks, a really good example is on screen right now. If you don't mind scrolling up just a touch, that D4 that's kind of shooting off to the side, that is one of my favorite dice that I've ever made. It was a commission for an old friend from college. I'm friends with both he and his wife, and she reached out, like, hey, I want to set a birthday set. And this is my take on a Galaxy style that I've developed. And you can see that there are that blue shard that's going through. That's because that's the blank. So there's effectively kind of two dice in there. I had to make the blank, and then I recast it in the shell for numbers.
Does that make them less balanced though?
Nah. It just it protects some of the things you can do. So maybe people might do like a washi tape die where they just they cast the blanks and then they put washi tape or other decorations on it. For this, in my take on a Galaxy style, please no one steal this, but if you don't mind scrolling,
cover your ears.
Secrets of my techniques. If we can click, on that D4, if we rotate it, see if there's any other images.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So here, if you look at the bottom there on that 2, that's some gold leaf. In my Galaxy, I'll take just little bits of gold, little bits of silver for some metallic asteroid feel. And I might use a toothpick scraper kind of tool. And I'll put it on the silicone mold. You got to make molds. We'll get there in the greater scheme. And I kind of rub it and scrape it along that wall. If I were to do that to the outside of the die, where the numbers are, it'll get rubbed off either in the sanding process or as my players play with it. It has to be protected by that outer layer of resin. And that's also very true. You can see just a little bit. If we want to hit the arrow again, there might be another side that shows it off. No, not that angle. But there we can see it. The buyer did want to have 69 on the top of the D20s, so that's why that came up real quick. So
Oh my God!
that was a special. I do take requests. We're in our 30s.
This brings us to command 69. Use it, guys, in the chat. You'll find a little surprise.
But you can actually see there that kind of dusting around it, that kind of silver dusting. That's mica powder, and so that's one of the things you can use to color the resin, and it's called cold casting, where I will take a brush and kind of tap it in my mica powders and spread it on the inside of the mold, so that when the resin's poured, it'll pull it off the mold, but it's on the outside of the resin, and it'll get rubbed away in the sanding, polishing, or even just casual play. So you have to, if you do a cold cast, you have to protect it.
I'm just over here feeling like I have learned nothing possible usable information about making dice, and I'm just so curious because I know you didn't start from you didn't grow up from a long lineage of dice makers.
No.
Like, how the fuck do you learn how to do this in actual terms?
There's a lot of dice tutorials online, various YouTubes. I've spent a lot of time watching other makers and other YouTube people. That's the thing.
And you retained it? Your brain actually works that way. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, I mean, there is trial and error too. So one of the tips and tricks that I learned in the hard way is that resin casting is, first off, toxic. We need to always talk about safety in working with resin. It is a chemical reaction. So one of the things, like I said, learned the hard way, is that each resin company will give you instructions. Maybe it's 1-to-1 by volume or weight. I have a food scale that I have used to make sure I'm getting the right weight.
Okay.
So it can be 2-to-1, 1-to-1. It just depends on your manufacturer. Look at their instructions. But if you already have the blank die and you're casting it in a shell, you don't need a lot of resin. So I would do the correct ratio, but I'd only get maybe 20 grams or 20 milliliters. I wouldn't get a lot of resin because I didn't need a lot of resin.
Because that's just casting on the outside of what already exists, the blank.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Tracking.
But you need to have enough resin for the chemical reaction for it to cure properly. So I had a bunch of dice that failed, and one way you can try to know is the thumbnail test. If you push your thumbnail into the resin and it leaves an imprint, it's not properly cured. It is not safe to play with. You should wash your hands after handling it. I would not sell a die that did not pass the thumbnail test.
And do they just cure on their own, in air, or do you put them under the thing that you go to the dentist after you get a cavity fill?
Depends on the type of resin. So we're looking here at this Eldritch God geode set. A lot of things are happening in here.
I have my eye on this, by the way. This will be my next order.
That one, that was a special request order. I do still have the molds for the tentacles, so I can recreate it. Perfect. I would want to get a different type of die, though, because as you can see, the numbers do take up the entirety of the face. And I've tried to highlight the numbers with a toothpick, and that's kind of what's happening there. Yeah.
For old people like me, I love that. I could see that without having to bend down and look at it.
I'm glad. I think it's effective. I just think it's a little unclean. I'd like it to be just a little bit more polished. So what I would prefer to do is maybe get a set of dice that have the numbers kind of shrunken and off to the side, so that while the numbers are smaller, there's more face to show off the inclusions, whether those be tentacles or I have a set that I ordered from Italy, and it's each die is this little platform, and it's called there's flowers and skulls, and it's super grave cleric. It's amazing. So as a collector, it's one of my favorite sets.
And then the numbers are off to the side, so it's almost like rather than ordering dice, you're ordering an art piece that you could use as dice rather than the other way around.
Yeah, there are a lot of dice makers making really, really cool art. But you asked about curing. And
Yeah.
the reason I bring up the set and why this is actually really interesting is because the resin you use for the dice, it will cure over time. It's really just, we're going to sit and wait. But in making a set like that with the geode or the tentacles, there's a indent in the geode, so it's like dipping into the die, and I have the tentacles extending through the indent, so they're not like laying across the bottom. It is kind of like a layered three-dimensional thing, so there would be a shadow. And to make sure that the tentacle stays there, I use UV resin. And so I will get a little bit of UV resin, put it on there, kind of like super glue, stick it in there, blast it with the UV light till it holds. I do the same thing with like glitter that I would be doing for the geode effect. This set has kind of like that frosted rim around it. I can't remember if I did that with mica powder. I assume I did that with mica powder instead of like a paint, but I could have just painted it. And like acrylics, paint it on there, let it dry, and then cast it.
I could watch this video all day. You'll find like new things to look at every time.
And one of the really interesting things about geode sets too is there are lots of different approaches. There is a dice maker in Japan, and I got one of her sets, and I tried to copy her style, but you'd almost have to make separate molds because while this is a geode set, my attempt, because I didn't make enough resin, it didn't cure properly. Instead of doing a blank, you half cast it and then fill the rest with new resin. So I did attempt it. It is on my Instagram if you want to scroll up a little bit, but it's a very different approach that I think is very, very cool. Keep going, please. It's right there. It's the middle one right now. That kind of, black and spacey. So you can see that kind of black resin. That's not a geode. I cast it, made kind of like silicone plugs to hold the resin in as it was in the pressure pot, and then took it out. I actually used glass. It was a little dangerous. And I added glass and
I like it. You guys risking his life to make your dice, you guys. Life is on the line. Don't ask him if they're balanced.
I made this really cool sculpture. I think if we click through, there might be angles that show it off a little bit better. That 12. So I had to put the die back in and get it to line up the numbers perfectly. And then I poured clear on top. So this is not a blank die inside of a casing. This is a die that has been cast one half at a time. And it was my first attempt.
Sure, you got to do that darker side first, and then you just kind of fill in the gaps with the clear. Oh my God. I love that every aspect of this, if my old eyes could look at it up close, it's like it tells a story. There is a story intermixed with every single facet of this die. And like that every one of those facets is going to be carried into your player's character and their game. That's just like, we are so lucky to be living in a time when people are putting this much work and heart into every single die like you are. I mean that.
No, and I honestly, there is a level of this where, like, I'm gonna have a label and it's, business, but I have the luxury of having, a full-time separate job, and the hard thing is I tend to work in very, very challenging areas of the law, and I actually couldn't remember the character, but there's a TV character, I want to say from like NCIS or something like that, and he like makes canoes in his basement. There is a meditative
guy.
The what?
Isn't that like the main guy in NCIS? Like,
yeah, I thought so. I couldn't remember.
Dad, I don't know why. My dad loves that show.
But it's meditative. There's, for me, there's like a level of the creative outlet but it's meditative, and making these in certain parts of the process gives.
You're old, Witch Rising. You're old too. Now we know.
I'm old and I'm stressed because I work in very hard areas of the law.
Yeah.
Not like the law is challenging. It's things like, when I say humanitarian immigration relief, I have done work talking about things like the Convention Against Torture, human trafficking. I have done that kind of stuff. And so not only is there a process, a creative thing, I am able to give something of myself in a very peaceful way, in a way that is just good. Not to say that work is good, but there's always that hard, things that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
There's a level of dice making and, with Clay Table, my buddy making mugs when I was doing this under his label, I'd go to shows and, I move his mugs. I love selling his mugs. They're great mugs. I can sell them right now.
Is that one of his mugs that says "eat shit"?
No, unfortunately. My mug for him, because I've moved across, I've had to get rid of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
His mugs are in the office.
It didn't fit in the LeSabre.
At work.
Fine.
Yeah.
You could cram one small mug in the LeSabre. Okay.
I did. That's the thing. I took my favorite mug of his and I have carried it back and forth across this country 3 times. I have a plate of his that I've carried across back and forth 3 times. But we always have this bowl of dice that were seconds that I didn't want to finish. For whatever reason, they weren't quite something that I was going to polish up and try to sell. Mm-hmm. So they're just in a big bowl. They're $5. And these kids will run in and just be so excited to just stick their hands in a bowl of dice and play with them. Yeah. And there is something about that where, a lot of my legal work does involve kids. I don't really work with kids directly. I don't necessarily have that skill set, but just to have a thing that is giving joy to people's life that is devoid of hardship is a really special thing for me. And so there is a level of this work too where even thinking about certain times of the year coming up, hey, in Pride Month I will probably be making dice, and because I have a job, I will probably be selling these dice that I make in Pride, and all of those proceeds might go to something like the Trevor Project. Because I have that kind of flexibility, and for me this isn't I'm not trying to be a full-time artist with this. This is a creative outlet, and I do really enjoy doing it, but I also really enjoy supporting the community. And so, I do kind of have a little bit of luxury there to be, a little bit more free with where some of those monies are going to. With that being said, I'm not quite at a place to produce dice. I need a few more paychecks because it will take me at least $1,000 to start running again. Because earlier we talked about the process. I have to buy masters. I will have to buy a tent in my apartment, and I picked this apartment specifically because there's a window right here. This is all very blank because this will be full of dice making stuff. Yeah. But I'm going to get a grow tent or a spray tent, and it'll be able to vent the fumes, right out. Because when you're working with resin, you need to be in a well-ventilated area, or a tent you can ventilate. You need to be wearing a mask, you need to be wearing gloves, because when the two A and B parts of resin start to connect and blend together, it is toxic.
So this basement area would not be suitable.
No, it would not. Yeah,
would it be a good time though?
I don't think it's the fun kind of toxic. I think you just get sick.
Oh, okay. But how sick?
I have yet to test that, to be honest with you.
I will let you know. I'm going to take your tips, the little that I gained. I'm going to do this completely wrong, and I'll keep you updated if I can still use my hands by the end of it.
I strongly encourage safety, wearing your gloves, single-use gloves each time. I will get a respirator. I currently don't have one. I have already started researching the kind of tent that I want to put up in here in the space. I will need to get a pressure pot and an air compressor. And I've been doing research into air compressors that are quiet enough for apartment use, because people do like airbrush, things like that. So, there are lots of reasons to have an air compressor in your apartment, but there are some that are rated to about 56 decibels, which, you can talk over, but that's $200 right there,
I'm not aware of those because I work in a theater warehouse half the time, and I'll be listening like blaring music. All of a sudden, that air compressor turns on, and I can't hear myself think. I'm like, is this the best we can do in 2024?
No, it's not. You could just get a different air compressor. They make them.
Oh, I'll let my team know. Yeah,
of course. Well, that's the thing too when it comes to pressure pots. So to kind of talk about the process again, and these are just kind of the hardware. Talk about like silicone, the resin itself, and all the materials and inclusions. But you get your masters. You want to make dice. You decide you're making dice. We're going back big picture.
So you want to make dice.
So you want to make dice. You got your masters. They ship to you, and they're 3D printed. So the first thing you need to do with your masters is polish them up, because the more work you can do the more work you do on the front end to get them really nice and polished, the less work you have to do on each die at the end of the day. So you get your masters and you polish them. Polishing is a multi-step process. There are lots of different approaches, and I've tried using a tumbler before. This isn't a rock tumbler that goes over and over again. This is a vibratory tumbler. They're like a big bowl, and a lot of people use them for shell casings, like bullet shell casings, to polish those and clean them up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. This process didn't work for me. I know there are dice makers who use it, and when I was done, I gave it to my uncle because he uses, musket shooting. I don't know, maybe he could use it. I don't know. But you will get like a ceramic medium, little ceramic balls, and you just kind of toss your polishing paste in, and you just let it vibrate for a weekend and hope for the best.
A whole weekend?
You do your testing and you see how many hours it takes, because there's a point of diminishing returns. Right?
Yeah.
So there are some dice makers who do that. I say a whole weekend, maybe 13 hours. It kind of just depends. Depends on your pace, depends on your process, all that kind of stuff. For me, I will probably use an extremely high grit sandpaper, 3,000, 4,000, something like that, and I'll do a wet sanding. Now, even in sanding, you're probably still going to wear gloves or a mask. Like, do your research, understand the risks and your own safety. But you'll do a wet sanding, and it'll get kind of scuffed. And then we're going to come in with, they're called Zona papers. So it's another kind of sandpaper, but they're like microns. It just kind of feels like rough paper, as opposed to like the grit of a sandpaper. So Zona, Zona. So you'll do some Zona sanding. And a lot of dice makers, myself included, will do this on a pottery wheel, which is great because I was working out of my buddy's studio, who was a potter.
Comes in handy.
I need to get a new one for those with the video. This is my current pottery wheel. It is super tiny, and it's
that is not what I was thinking when I saw about a pottery wheel.
Yeah, this was an Amazon special just to get me by. It is terrible to work on. I can't do it. I need something bigger, just a couple inches across. So that's another investment I need to do. But you'll have to like tape the paper to the wheel, and that's why it was so hard to use, because I couldn't like tape it down. So you get your pottery wheel out, you tape down your sandpaper, your Zona paper. You'll typically go through a couple of colors of Zona paper, and then a lot of people, myself included, are going to transition into using a Dremel and using a paste. My paste is in a plastic bag. It also has moved across the country 3 times because it's expensive and I didn't want to replace it. And again, different dice makers will have different steps. I'm currently using a single step paste. I'll probably up that to a 2-step paste. Those polishing pastes, some people use like headlight polishing paste. Looking over my
Mhm.
shoulder, my eyes are worse. It's a 3M polishing paste.
Mhm.
So you get your polishing paste, you put it on the Dremel, you go at a low speed on the Dremel, and the softest Dremel tool because you don't want to cut into the die. Um, and then you polish it from there. So that's the polishing process. You'll have to do that for every side of your masters as you're starting out. But once you cast your die, typically you don't have to go through all of those steps on your newly created dice, at least while your mold is young. As your mold gets old and overused, it'll get more rough and you have to do more and more polishing, and then you make new molds.
Did you make your molds yourself, like out of what?
Yep. That's the next step. Great question. Teed me up. Because once you have your masters, you're going to get silicone. I use silicone, I want to say Dragon Scale 20. There are a lot of different kinds
name
of
for
silicone.
silicone, by the way. They knew who they were selling to with that name.
Right.
We're gonna get all the dirt with this.
That is also a preference for different dice makers, because there are different silicone strengths and like hardiness and like flexibility, and so there's just a preference level. But a lot of dice making too is mold making, and I think that's something even from your speaker last week talked about making molds and pottery. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Wow.
Oh, of course, it was a great episode. I was also teed up to talk about some of the books I've been reading because there's some similarities. But mold making is with silicone, and a lot of dice making I really enjoy because there's a lot of planning ahead, a lot of hurry up, like get everything in line, and then the clock is on because things are, percolating and they are curing, and you got to be ready. So you have your masters, you have your silicone. It's also usually a 1-to-1. You're mixing these things together. What you want to do is, I use cardboard. So I'll put down a piece of cardboard so I have a flat surface. And some people use vinyl. I tried vinyl, I'm not a fan. I will use just packing tape, and I'll lay down strips of packing tape. And I usually make molds from one. I'm going to make one container that'll hold all the dice. Some dice makers have little molds, one for each die. That's their process. And depending on what I'm doing, I actually kind of want to do the same, depending on the style of dice I want to do. Because like, if I'm making those really small inclusions, they can break very easily when I'm trying to get it back in. So I might want to have something that has more accessibility. But there's a perfect example. That's my mold. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that earlier, so I scroll back up.
Yep, that's what more of the finished project.
Even your molds are pretty. Come on, Ben. Leave some cool for the rest of us, please.
well,
that could be plain. That could be plain white, but no, you're like, I'm gonna sprinkle some shit in.
Well, it can help to add some alcohol ink, some dyes in the resin to keep track of like which resin mold you're working with, so your lids match. So you have your cardboard, you lay down your sticky surface. I use packing tape, and then you're going to place a die face. Actually, I'm going to place the PVC pipe around or down onto the tape, and then you place one side of the die on the tape. Now you can see in that mold, that particular mold, wait for it to come around, they're all ones. So it depends on the dice maker, perspectives, all these different things. A lot of dice makers will put the one face down because that's going to be where you're going to have to do a lot of the work. And people don't really care about one, they care about the top number, right? Your end user. You'll also see like little circles. You want to make, they're called keys when you're making your molds. So I will put, those were little magnets I had in the shop.
Oh, to help lock in the lid.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you're going to take those out later.
Got it.
So once you have your dice set up in the mold, there's enough space for them. You have your keys set up. You take your tape, you pull it up around the mold, or maybe you're using vinyl, maybe you're using a hot glue gun. You want to seal it off so that the silicone won't leak out.
Yeah, because it
Of
needs
the
to be a
sides.
tight seal.
Right, right.
Okay.
You mix your silicone, and you got to make sure you mix enough. You know, you hope for the best. You hope for the best. Generally, you're going to try to like measure and plan out ahead of time. I just can't remember how much I used back in the day, but you mix up the silicone. Some dice makers and some people who work with silicone will say you need to use a vacuum chamber. I don't use one, but a vacuum chamber would be something where you mix the silicone, you're creating a negative space, and then you're pulling the bubbles out of the silicone so that it pours smoothly. So remember, vacuum chamber for silicone, pressure pot for dice. I have been successful by only using a pressure pot on my silicone. So it's been successful. You know, I at this point in my life, I don't see a need for a vacuum chamber. Maybe that'll change someday. But you know, I have my mold. I make the seal, put in some rubber bands, do the best I can, pour in the silicone, and then you lift it up by the cardboard. Had to plan ahead. You need a hard surface, and then you very carefully put that in the pressure pot, and you pressurize it. Now, a pressure pot is a tool equipment. I use power tools. I don't. I have no idea what a power tool is.
You know how you can tell? Because you're wearing a really dope ass flannel right now.
I'm wearing a flannel. I am totally comfortable around power tools.
We can fix anything, if you couldn't tell by our great twin look.
I'm not at all afraid of chainsaws.
Nope. I've used
totally
one.
Comfortable. Yeah. But so if you're doing your research and you're looking into dice making, you will see a lot of conversation about retrofitting Harbor Freight paint spray chain pressure things to be a resin pressure pot. People will do that because apparently for like spraying paint, you use some sort of pressure paint spray chamber, and people will modify it on their own to use it as a pressure pot for resin. I don't do that because I'm afraid.
We're honest here on FGBG. I like it.
I don't want to play around with that. And there's a company, California Air, something like that. They make pressure pots for resin. I got a rather large one when I was doing it, and I was very successful with that. I had no issues, no leaking. You know, everything generally went pretty well. So that's another thing I need to buy. I need to buy a pressure pot because you put your silicone in there, you pressurize it, and much like the resin, we're shrinking those bubbles because there's so much air in there. I didn't pull the silicone out. You know, there's fair critique to say, hey, that's the process. Well, I don't do that, and I've been relatively successful, so it is what it is.
Relatively, you've been freaking successful. Look at these.
Thank you. Actually, I was really proud of that set too. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
All of these sets, like honestly, after the stream, off camera, I'm gonna like be hitting you up for where can I buy the rest? Because I don't want any dice except yours at this point.
Thank you. Well, and there is conversation when you're thinking about bubble sizes and things like that. I do relatively high pressure on my dice. You probably only need to get to 35 or 40 psi for your resin. Some people on the internet will be like, oh, well, you want to go at least 5 ps higher than the psi that you're pressurizing your dice in. I don't know how much that really matters. I look at my pressure pot and I see, okay, if it's rated for like 80, I might put it to 60 because again, I'm afraid. I just don't want to push it. So 60 felt safe. I felt like I was doing 60, 50 maybe. And also, you know, the kind of a question of how much pressure can your pot hold and not leak? Those sorts of questions as well. You want to make sure you have a good seal on that. So that's the base of the mold. You throw it in there. Silicone cures a little bit quicker than resin, I want to say. But even then, I still give it the full 24 hours instead of like the 4 or 8. That's some like the quick curing
So
silicone will do.
you do 20 to 16 hours additionally just to make sure.
The consequences of failure are much higher. I don't want to have a soupy mess.
Yeah.
And depressurize, especially on my masters, and have to go in and clean all that silicone out and just kind of, that sounds like a nightmare. So
there's no such thing in that case of, it sounds like, of going like too long. Like longer is better.
Yeah.
If you're okay, you can't like burn it like a cake or a pizza.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I have had, but the other side of the coin is I have had like the label said, oh, this will be cured in 4 hours or 8 hours. 4 was like the rapid curing, and I went back to it in 6, and it was still like really tacky, and is a thing of like, oh no, yeah. The silicone doesn't have that test. Silicone's not toxic, so you're safe there.
Damn it! I thought I learned something.
You are correct.
Trying with me, Ben. Keep trying. It takes a lot to get through this skull, so keep going.
No, that's the right test, though. Hey, I mean,
I learned something tonight, kids. All the dice makers are gonna find this and be like, "Wow, vote that host, whoever the fuck he was, canceled." But that guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, that's the thing. There's all these different approaches. So, after your silicone has cured, you'll degas the pressure pot, open it up, and we're gonna take off the tape and the tube, PVC pipe. You can get those really short PVC, but like for plumbing joint junctures or whatever.
So really, you have a tube that you pour like the silicone in the bottom, and like that becomes that like gives you that round shape.
Yeah, that's literally a PVC pipe that I
curious.
found at Lowe's. Yeah, I just went to the plumbing section at Lowe's.
And you just like cut it short, so it just becomes like a nice little cask.
I'm afraid of power tools. We're not cutting anything. We're finding like the juncture.
Long. Okay. Oh, gotcha.
There's something in plumbing where they'll like have connecting pieces, and I bought those.
Yes, we know what those are.
Absolutely.
Tim the Toolman Taylor here.
So you pull it out, you yank the PVC pipe off. You get the keys out. So you take the little, like for me, I use those little magnets, and I took those out. And then you can also see on the sides, like I'll cut shapes into it with my X-Acto knife. And so maybe that's like, I have one that's a triangle and the others are squares. Because again, I really want that lid to be secure.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on in my process, and in my journey, my dice making journey,
I'm gonna pause it.
I started.
So like here you have squares. Over here you have triangle. Okay.
Right. So I have it lined up correctly, so I know exactly. The triangle goes here. This, what goes in the square hole? Squares. What else goes in the cylinder?
That's what crying. I always struggle with that one.
And then I started cutting down the side and making like T's. So it'll like imagine the square from your vertical view, and then it branches out. So it's another layer kind of locking it in and holding the lid down. Because one of the things that can happen is that the pressure, I'm actually kind of guessing here, I think one of the things that happens is that the pressure is too quick and the resin kind of explodes out of it, or the resin like flash cures and you can't get a really good seal because you don't get that as tight as possible. Mm-hmm. And you kind of want to hold the lid down. Some dice makers and myself as well, for a while, I used weights on top of the lids with the resin, when I was casting, because I didn't want that lid to come up. I didn't want to give the resin a place to explode out of. So casting keys into my lid, kind of helps really hold it down. But silicone sticks to itself. So once you have this part, what we're seeing, the little holes in the thick part of the mold, you want to go through and use maybe some Vaseline or talc powder and like talc powder and like a brush. Mm-hmm. And you got to put some sort of silicone release, and you got to put that where the silicone is, but not on the die, right? Because we want the silicone to touch the die and make the right impression for the
like
the one side.
along here, like around where the actual dice would go. Okay.
So I've tried both talc, Vaseline. I don't know if I have a really strong preference, but I'll sacrifice a paintbrush to the Vaseline, and it's just my Vaseline brush, and because you can't use it for anything else once it's a Vaseline brush. It's just that's what it is.
No.
And you have to just very carefully go along, each side of the die. Make sure you don't get the Vaseline on the die. If you do, wipe it away, that kind of thing. Get it in the keys. And once everything's nice and lubed up, we're going to take our tape, wrap it back around.
We're talking about holes and lube.
Holes, Vaseline.
I might have to go into
silicone
after this. God.
Very much like before, I'm going to take tape. I'm going to wrap the tape around, just because it's hard to get it back in the PVC pipe. I don't want to push or pull on the mold as much as possible while we're getting it set with the masters. I want it to be as perfect as possible. So I roll tape around it. Tape doesn't stick super well to silicone, so again, rubber bands to go in there. And again, I mix my silicone, pour it slowly on top, back in the pressure pot for another 24 hours. So we are 2 days in. We probably took a couple days to sand the dice. Now we're taking it just because, time. Who has the time? Who has the time?
Honestly, after I've heard this process, how does anybody, the fact that there's any dice makers on my feed at all, like, who are these people, these monsters of ingenuity?
We watch a lot of Critical Role in the background.
That's how you're caught up. I can never catch up. That's how you're caught up. That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just for Critical Role, I'm going to dice making.
So yeah, you took hours to sand and polish. You're taking at least 2 days to make the molds. But now, after the lid is cured and you get your X-Acto knife, because it's never perfect, and you slowly release the lid, you have your molds, you gently work your masters out, and now you're ready to cast some dice. And again, kind of like the clock is on. Different resin cure at different speeds. So again, I can talk about all these different techniques. One of the techniques that I don't do is Petri style. And so the reason I don't do it is because you really need a slow curing resin. You'll pour the resin in the mold, and then you take your alcohol inks and pour layer after layer of color and white, color and white, color and white. And the white is a little bit heavier, and it'll start to pull the color through the resin, and it looks like a petri dish.
Okay.
But the resins I typically work with cure too quickly, and so you don't get the cool effect, and then the resin doesn't cure because the alcohol will interact with it. So a lot of people who do it will do it as a blank. But depending on your style and your cure time, one of the reasons I kind of really enjoy like dice making as opposed to baking, because I just taking the time and being really careful. You have to pre-plan everything. So if we're looking at these different dice, it's like, okay, so what inclusions am I putting in? What colors am I putting in? What orders am I putting in? Am I using a mica powder? Am I using? I've even used cotton balls that I've gotten really cool like opaque effects with. That I think I really like it. And I still have no. Yes, I have one set. I'll have pre-pulled. If I'm doing like a set of 7 dice, I'll have that all pre-pulled. Everything is like mise en place. I am ready to go.
Is he speaking French?
Yeah, mise en place. It's a it's a French term. It's a culinary term for getting all of your ingredients in order. So, like, if you're going to cook a dish, you have everything.
I don't know what that word means on 2 accounts, both the word and the meaning.
So we're doing mise en place in our dice making, because once you start to mix those resins together, the clock is ticking. You've got maybe 20 minutes, and it is too thick and gummy to work with. And I've hit that, and I'm trying to just shove it into the molds, and it just doesn't work very well.
You have to scrap it. You have to start over.
Well, I still toss it in the pressure pot and hope for the best. But usually,
That was evident
usually, yeah. And that's, I
on the
mean,
economy page.
to kind of pull another similarity with pottery, when we talk about gifts from the kiln, talking with Cody and some of the amazing glazes he gets, much like my dice making, his pottery, everything's unique. It's one of a kind. I can't truly replicate some of these things because you have pottery, you mix your glazes, you throw it in the kiln, you hope for the best, and you get gifts. Similarly, sometimes you get gifts from the pressure pot. I don't know what's going to come out. I'm throwing things together. I hope I get a really cool look, and sometimes I'm really, really lucky. That's a little bit of a Petri attempt. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I heard you say that, like with the dripping down, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that must be what it's like.
Yeah. So in the dice making, you mise en place. You have everything you want to go in, prepped and ready to go. You mix the resin in. You see that it's fully mixed. You have your A's and B's. It's together, and then you toss it in the mold. You layer it in the way that makes sense. You know what you're doing for light, color, everything you need. You put the lid on. You secure it with the tabs on my lid that I started to do, or maybe you have a weight. And then you put it in the pressure pot for at least 30 psi for about 24 hours, depending on your resin. And then you pull it out and you have your dice, pop them out. And then that sanding process I talked about earlier, we're going to do that again. Typically, at least for the die that was with the mold, the top of the mold, the lid, and often the sides around it, because you're going to get what's called flashing. And you can see a little bit of it here. Like if you look at that one, you'll see little bits of resin kind of hanging off the sides of the die.
Like old army soldier toys.
Exactly.
Pressed, and you have the little bit where the seam met.
Yep.
I learned that on an Instagram reel this week when looking at Toy Story. So don't tell me the internet's not educational, kids.
Yep. Where that seam was for my mold for the army, that's the seam for my mold for my dice. And that kind of resin that hangs on is called flashing. And you have to, I'll usually trim that down with, craft cutters. And then you have to sand it down. You got those craft cutters. Sometimes they're wire cutters, whatever. But because it has that hard edge, you have to sand it down. And because you sand it down, you're scuffing it. Now we have to go through the full sandpaper, Zona paper, polish paste. And so like a D12 has, let's say we make the lid on the one side, you have the one, but then you have 5 sides all around it. And I know that because I've sanded a lot of D12s.
You speak like someone who knows this area.
Yes.
That's strange. Okay.
And it's really cool
dice making. I can tell you in detail how to do it. It's really quite easy from what I've been told.
And it's so cool because the initial making, design, you have your mise en place, you have your design ahead of time, you have like what you're gonna do, what you hope you do. The clock is ticking because the resin's mixed together, and like, oh, I made a mistake. Or there was one set where somehow I wasn't fully prepared, and I had to cut some sheets of paper with scissors, and I accidentally cut some of my glove off. So a bit of my like nylon glove was cast in the D10, and I actually sold that set. Because I marketed it as like Pact of the Dice Maker, because the D10 had a bit of like the dice maker's glove in it, and it's like
your blood, yeah.
Blood wasn't in it, but yes.
We're shipping toxic material, guys. This is sick.
So you kind of hope for the best. You see what comes out, and then you spend so much time sanding down each side, polishing each side, and then you paint each side. And the numbers, the inking. And there are lots of different approaches to inking. I know some dice makers use an alcohol ink, and I've seen them use like a dropper and pour it in. I tend to use acrylics. I also really, really like the one of a kindness of the process, because it really would be like the set we're looking at right now is a red and black set. I can do another red and black set, but it's not going to be this. It'll never be this. Like we're looking right now that the 4 side on the D6 has these cool black like flames coming up the side. I can't guarantee that if you commission me. I can't say that that'll happen again.
But even a black and white or black and red set, it's still got these flecks of green, like flame and galaxy kind of, like all of yours do. They're so freaking unique.
The flecks of green you're seeing is mylar paper. It's like shiny paper. Michael's.
He shrugs as if this magic just you just go to the store and buy it.
Yeah, well, you buy it and you crinkle it up the right way. You want to make sure you're having windows of light, and while I'm thinking about light and we're talking about like the mylar and all these things, I think we talked about it before, but making sure you're doing the right color for the set that makes sense. Because if you're coming in with like a very light, clear set and you're inking it in like a strong black, not only will the black really stand out, but it's gonna affect the interior of the die. So that's when it's one of those things like I might have mentioned earlier on stream, like you might want to come in with silver underneath and then paint black on top, because I really like considering the underpainting and how that's going to affect the interior of the die and light reflecting off of it, and the exterior of the die, and making sure it's not only legible, but it really makes sense for the style of the die. But when we have these sort of like reflective things, your inclusions, things like that, even thinking about that cold casting process I talked about, like if I go in and paint with mica powder the inside of the die for the blank, and I am too heavy with it, you're not going to be able to have light to come through and really show off those inclusions. It's going to be too dark. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about not just your color theory, the reactions in the color theory, but also light, the shape of the die. Because there are cool things you can think of, like, oh, what if I like paint something really cool in the die and then have it in there? You can, but remember, it's a faceted thing.
Yeah,
it's going to break up the look.
Uh-huh.
Thinking about how to color your resin, whether it's mica powder, which will be very opaque, or you can use alcohol inks. They do have just resin dyes. I don't know if we can scroll out and back up.
We can do anything.
But there are some of my Galaxy sets. This would be much newer. We already looked at some of them for certain techniques.
Would it be closer to the top?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Sir. Sir is my father. He definitely doesn't know shit. He knows even less shit about this shit.
So
that's great.
Could be,
by the way, if Dad, if ever you're watching, you won't, but
we're skipping the sorry, my stream. We went too far. It froze on my end and skipped ahead. But like that, so like that D4, that Galaxy D4 that we already looked at, we can revisit.
Like this set.
Yeah, because that D4 shows off so many really cool things. You see that there's that brown in the corner?
Right here.
Yeah. One of the colors that are really difficult to work with for resin work and dice work, at least in my experience, is pink, because it burns. And that brown is the pink. So you'll see pink in parts of those dice, but you also see brown. And
like
that's
in this corner of the dice, this brownish orangish color, that was pink?
Yeah.
Oh,
because you don't, they're all chemical reactions. You don't know what's going to happen. So you can see in this dice that there is pink. Some of the pink stayed pink, but some of the pink turned brown. It burned. We got like that kind of brown amber.
Yeah.
Really kind of burning
amber.
color.
That's a better name for it. But I love that contrast, even though it maybe wasn't intentional. It contrasts so nicely against the rest, and it makes it so fucking unique.
Well, and here I am going to brag. That burn was intentional.
Previously,
and that's the thing. Previously, it was unintentional, and I'm getting these, colors. I'm like, oh, I don't really like what the pink is doing, but what do I want in a Galaxy style? What do nebulas look like? Let's pull up some pictures there are burn brown colors in nebula. So I knew the pink would behave this way. At least I hoped it would behave this way. And so I leaned into it and I wanted it to do that, and just kind of celebrated that chemical reaction that would happen instead of being like, oh, why does my pink do this?
I love that
Some of the
word,
pink does it.
celebrate.
Yeah, we're gonna use it because that's what it does, and that's great. We love it for its burning.
Ugh. Ben, like, I am just agog and aghast at not only your creations, but the way that you're able to speak to them with such expertise and knowledge. Like, I've never known anything in my life as well as you've known about how to make dye. And I find that so impressive and so very cool. And like, the question that keeps coming back to me, which is something that you kind of mentioned before, is clearly this takes time and material and cost and energy. And it's not like you're sitting on oodles of time. You have a full-time job in the law space.
Yeah.
So for anybody that missed it or anybody that needs to hear it again, I think it's important to touch on why the hell do you find joy in doing this? Why are you spending so much time on this? Why is it so important to find something apart from your day-to-day to create things like this?
It really is, it can sound like a drag and a pull, like sit there at a, polished wheel and sand, side after side after side. But there is a meditative level to that. It is a way of, I have really complicated feelings about when we talk about self-care, because I don't feel like we should relegate it to only like personal things. Like if self-care is, community things, like in interaction, I would say like playing D&D would be a form of self-care.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like bubble baths in the tub, but having an opportunity to kind of, just focus on something tangible that I can sand and add almost, not just adding something like beautiful. I try to make beautiful things, and but
you try.
The goal is to make beautiful things.
You can't help but make beautiful things is what I've gained. Move on.
It's just nice to have something that isn't connected to some of the very hard sectors that I work in. Even now, I am doing again comparatively like easy work in the sense that I am doing pro bono eviction defense. So the state of Washington has a right to counsel in eviction matters if you can't afford an attorney. Those are still very hard conversations. A lot of times these are people, who just lost a job, their life's falling apart, now they're getting evicted. And really there's not, it depends. But a lot of times there's not a whole lot we can do. And so that's kind of, a step back from, like I mentioned earlier, like literally I have worked on torture claims, trafficking claims, things like that in my humanitarian immigration work. And in my time in Indiana, I also was an attorney for the Department of Child Services. So I kind of have a history of like, devoting my professional life to really difficult situations. And I do enjoy that. But to have something that is giving to the community that people, can use and love and get joy from, that doesn't have any of that other, hard baggage to it, right. I think is really life-giving for me. And I guess I feel a sense of healing when I see, the joy of people's response. And like, for people who may have come on later, that kind of mentioning before of going to, like art shows and having a big bowl of dice that I didn't finish, to have these, oftentimes it's kids, but adults too, people come up and just like start digging through the dice and they're like, oh, this is really cool. And buy it or not,
Hi, I'm
you
one
had
of those.
fun
One of
looking
those
at it.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of a weight off my shoulders. And I think very similarly too, because I want to use this space, this new label, build it into a business, and I want to DM because I enjoy DMing. I enjoy storytelling. I like writing a lot, writing devoid of the legal burdens of writing, but writing
Right.
like fantasy, maybe some lit
Fun.
RPG someday. But that's the thing. I just want to give nice things. I want to give you a great set of dice. I want to give you a fantastic campaign that serves what you want from your stories that we tell together. And I'll be upfront. As a DM, there are certain things that I'm not good at DMing. Really complex political intrigue, things like that. I'm tired. I'm not good at it.
No, that doesn't work.
But like,
Bring on the combat with some bunch of goblins. Let's go.
combat. Opportunities for character growth and development. That for me is something I really enjoy about D&D, something I think is very therapeutic. Something that maybe, I have done work, with people going through trauma, done work myself with trauma. And there's an organization in Seattle called Peer Seattle, PER, peer-to-peer. And they actually got started in the 80s doing support groups for those with AIDS. And they've expanded. They're in places, all over. And my first time moving out to Seattle and trying to, make it in the big city, I was able to get involved with that organization, and they offer trainings. And I did like the group facilitator training. And so even bringing that kind of level to our thought about D&D, D&D is fun. It is play. But I do think there is some room for healing. And even for myself personally in my own journey, there's a conversation I would have with a DM in the sense of, if I'm playing like a cleric and we're doing a homebrew, I could not handle a storyline where my character gets rejected by the deity just because of some of my own life and the things I bring in. But I think there is room for me and myself that someday I'd be able to be a part of a campaign that, maybe I'd be able to play a cleric and maybe have some sort of relationship with the deity that could be reparative for things in my own life that have been a struggle.
Yeah. If T were here, my co-host, for those that maybe don't know, he was unable to join us, but his theory, he's been the forever DM. He was my first DM. And in my first D&D campaign, I played this like dragonborn barbarian.
Nice.
But he saw right through it. Yeah. And he's like, you brought everything that you were struggling with into that character. Mm-hmm. And it becomes almost a safe space to explore into battle and to just like face the demons that maybe so many of us are not ready to face in our own lives. Mm-hmm. And I'm with you. D&D is so therapeutic in so many ways. It can be traumatic when you're facing those exact mirrors of the things that you're dealing with your life, and you just want to play for the escape. But I'm with you. You touched on the reason that this channel, 4 Geeks by Geeks, exists in the first place is because for so many of us, especially adults, and I'm talking to anybody at home that needs to hear this or here in the chat live, for so long, so many of us were made to believe that these escapes that we pursue are a waste of time and is not productive in any sort of way, and we should be focused on A, B, or C adulting kind of things. But time and time again with these Geek Out sessions every Monday night, I hear every reason why that is utter bullshit. And we literally need these kinds of escapes because life is hard. And sometimes you just need that thing to look forward to that maybe it's not making you money. That's not what it's all fucking about, America. It's just about the joy that you are pulling from it, and knowing that maybe by creating something beautiful, you are giving somebody else that same little escape. And that doesn't happen unless you lean into that thing that you geek out so hard about. Like, if we all listen to that bullshit advice, this wouldn't exist. None of this would exist. And we'd all be unhappy all the time. But instead, we're only unhappy some of the time. And we have these moments of gratitude. And it's just so important to give space to those things that give you joy, that spark joy. It doesn't matter if it's dice making or miniature making or game designing or writing or drawing or cosplay. This is important and it matters. And I think especially in 2025, these are things that we need to really prioritize. And I'm proud of you, Ben, for making space in your life to make sure that this still goes on, because I speak for all of us that have seen your feed. And if you haven't, you need to go immediately to the link below in the description or command Rampant in the chat and drool over these dice, because you can tell from each and every one of these aren't things that happened by like happy accident. They happened by a beautiful accident in some ways, but it took time and it took effort and it took heart. So thank you for giving this community all of your work and all of your art. Truly.
Happy to. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Good. I know this is a longer session, and I wasn't ready to stop it because I just wanted to keep going. So I hope I wasn't disrespecting your time by letting this go a little longer tonight.
No, I had a great time. I really enjoyed talking. I am an attorney, and we love to sound in our own voice. The stereotype is true, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to come on here and not only talk about, my work, my art, things that are important to me, but also to give me the space to highlight people in my community, because we are all so connected. None of us do any of this on our own. From working with Sarah and the logo. Sarah Alana, she does tattoos. She did my tattoo. She made this logo and it's giving me the push to keep going, because I am still a little bit of ways away from being able to afford to get my studio going again. But this has really renewed my own drive, and people in my life like Cody and Clay Table. He has been fundamental, not just in my work, but in my life, a huge supporter for me, and push the dice and its work. And if anybody needs a mug, that's where you should get them.
Clay Table?
Clay Table, absolutely. I love selling his mugs. I move his mugs. But please do follow me at Rampant Hart Studios. Follow along as I try to get this business going and see what kind of things I do. It is kind of a play on words. Rampant Heart, a multi-passionate generalist, and we'll see what we do and all of the new places that this space online will go. Thanks again so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so glad that we got connected, and I'm even more glad that I've got a set of his dice. Fuck you, y'all. Get your own. I got some, but I promise you it will not be my last, because as I was drooling over your feed tonight, I'm like, I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. And because we play Fate Core, I don't know if you're maybe vaguely familiar, but they use, I'm reaching down because some fell during the feed. They use 4 6-sided dice, and they all have pluses and minuses. Is that something you could custom for us?
I'd have to order masters.
Okay. So expensive custom, but a custom nonetheless.
That is.
We'll talk.
Yeah, that's a whole rabbit trail of different types of dice. They use Vampire the Masquerade, plus and minus. People do all sorts of stuff.
that's what we're using now with fudge. They're called fudge dice. Anyway, Ben, you are just as magnificent as I anticipated. I've heard such good things, and I can't wait to hear even more good things as we continue this conversation, because now we're buds. You can't help it. You get no
Great.
say.
I'm excited, and maybe before too long, I'll see you through the computer, and we'll jaunt around the rims of the Underdark Empire of Lolth.
You can't say that out loud. You can't say it if you don't mean it. You can't say it if you don't mean it.
I mean it.
Yes, keep in touch. Keep me updated.
Yeah. Okay.
I would love that. I would love that. Y'all, if you had a good time here tonight, please let Ben know personally through DMing him tonight, because it's got to mean so much to even hear from a single person that has received your dice. Unlike me, who made the greatest faux pas of receiving his dice and never sending him a message, I just geeked out in my own isolation and loved them so much and showed everybody, but not him. And that's a shame. That's bad. That's on me. I own that. I'm going to grow from that in 2025. But order some. Oh, we had a question earlier in the chat. What is the average price, would you say? Like, maybe it's not custom. They're just like buying something that's already made.
It depends on the die, how much,
Absolutely.
has gone into it. A set of dice can go anywhere between, I would say a discounted set is somewhere around 50. Full price could be 70 to 90.
Mm-hmm.
My following and range, everything isn't really at a place. I'm not at a place to charge triple digits. But anywhere between 50 to 90. And again, something like 70, that's $10 a die. That's kind of, one of the things I think about.
And you heard tonight, if you watched how much work goes into every freaking dice. Like, I don't want to ever hear anybody, oh, really? That much? He's not a machine that is just like pumping this shit out. He's handcrafting every single die. That is worth far more. So thank you for discounting it to even 70. But you probably deserve a lot more. So there you go. You have it. If you're a dice maker in the making, you know where your baseline is. As long as you're putting as much, if not as much as Ben here. I didn't realize this stream about dice making would have me in my feels so much, but it did. It got me there. They always do. I don't know why I even doubt it. But please join us next week with a brand new Geek Out Sesh. Yes, I have a guest. It's already scheduled. Check it out. But until next time, I am Bozer.
Oh, and I'm Ben.
And you just keep
geeking out.
Bye-bye.